Thank you, Olivia, and thank you to everyone joining. Really appreciate the time, and I'm really excited to dive in and talk a little bit about internal audit, something near and dear to my heart. I'm going to bring up a few slides just to set the agenda. Want to talk through a little bit of what we're seeing when it comes to internal audit, where those teams are going, where we're seeing the market. I think Olivia introduced me, so we can skip through that, but do want to spend most of the time here in the platform just to give you an understanding of what we're solving for here at Trullion. Another item, we'll be monitoring the chat here, and if there are any questions, feel free to stop me, and I'm happy to facilitate the discussion there. So everyone knows me, my role here at Trullion. I support, internal audit teams, the big four, other, mid to regional CPA firms. I've been in audit technology for the past 6 years, former practitioner. So again, really excited to showcase what we have. I've been in a lot of your shoes when it comes to this. So I think first and foremost, want to talk about the problem statement here, in the internal audit world. Sampling risk is something that's constantly coming up. Teams typically will take a sample of 25 or 40, maybe even 50 if it's a high risk area. But I think we all know that where those exceptions and really where that risk lies is in, the other 99% of the population. User access reviews, something I did in the past back at Citron. That's something that is never going away. It's even more relevant, I think, as more teams use systems that can effectively impact the financial statements. And when we talk about the workflow or that field work to actually perform some of those tests, whether it's order to cash, procure to pay, these are all tests that have unstructured data that need to be vouched and traced, to all of this source information and can be very time consuming. One thing that maybe isn't talked about too much in the market is the shift from direct assist controls or external auditor reliance on controls. It's a real opportunity for IA teams to, maybe help reduce some of those external audit fees, or even help position those external audit firms to focus on, more risk heavy work as opposed to just grinding through a lot of that testing. I think what we see is, 0.5% to 2% of AP spend could be duplicate payments. That at a Fortune 500 company, results in millions of dollars of lost revenue or income there. So just at a high level, what we'll walk through today, Trullion is really consists of 3 core engines. Most applicable, I think, for internal audit teams are going to be, our data extraction component, being able to extract data from unstructured documents, contracts, invoices, purchase orders, and being able to work that in, bring that into a workable format to ideally, select your population, right? To do sample selection, or, in our case, where we help is perform 100% population testing there. The second, and where I'll spend most of the time, is our automated testing engine. So this is where we can have that full population, get all the source documents, do some workflow, field work, testing that will really help with the efficiency of your internal audit program. And again, help you focus on some of those things that are really going to build you into that trusted advisor within the organization. The 3 tests, talking a little bit about how I used to run internal audits. We had a new auditable entity that came on board or a special project, and we were looking at them for the first time. We wanted to, we had to build out that RCM, had to understand policies and procedures, had to understand how they operate, what the controls, we're just doing a walkthrough test of, or what we're doing, for effectiveness testing. So in that note, we'll then shift to user access review to show you how Trullion's AI can really power through a lot of that. And I'll definitely show you this order to cash. It's a really nice revenue leakage use case that we worked on with one of the big four, and definitely something that we've heard a lot of positive feedback on. So again, we've built this purpose-built assurance software. I think teams are really moving to that 100% coverage. At least, from my perspective, right, that risk lives in a lot of areas that we're not testing right now. The output is audit ready, so you can plug it into your system of record, whether it be Audit Board, Workiva, Diligent, right? We're agnostic to that. So we're really, you have those systems of record, we're that system of action. And ideally, you'll see how all of this can be templatized. So whether it's, interim testing, quarterly testing, year-end testing, we can templatize these and really make your teams highly efficient there. So with that said, I'll move right into the platform. Just want to check and see if we have any questions. All good. Okay, great. So just an introduction to Trullion here. We are a cloud-based environment, so you can access the platform from anywhere in the world as long as you have internet connection. We do have role-based configuration, so all teams can have access to the controls, the entities, what we call the workspaces that are applicable to them. Just a little bit of navigation, we can have parent-child workspaces. So if you have your auditable entities, you have each individual control. Here we'll be looking at transaction to reporting. I also have that user access control queued up for us today. But just from a navigation standpoint, file management, this is where all that unstructured data will live. Our OCR and our AI will start to scan that immediately upon it being uploaded into the platform. So a really nice way to get things started there. Of course, we are built for auditors by auditors. So we'll have an audit log of anything that occurred within the platform. Our newly released knowledge room, really nice when it comes to building out the knowledge base, whether you're doing a BSA AML compliance audit review, whether you're doing FFIEC or any other cyber review. You can load in guidance from the IIA, ISACA, SEC. Probably not applicable to most companies, but PCAOB for some of our audit firms. So really, you can start to build out that knowledge room so that it can help train that AI. A decision that we've made here at Trullion is that our AI does not learn on any of your data, any of your information. We want that to be proprietary to you. But we definitely have a lot of team members like myself that have trained this AI to really work as that second set of hands and that auditor there. So as I mentioned, let's start off by performing that planning exercise. You may be in the midst of you're just having initial conversations. You've kicked off the audit. You've collected all of those policy and procedure documents, and now you're really starting to build out your risk and control matrix. What I can do is I can actually use our agent Truly here, and I can start to. I've already loaded some of the documentation into the platform, but I can just bring in all the files that I've already loaded. So I'll go ahead, I'll bring in my policies and procedures. You can select as many or as few as you want. I can add that entire folder. I also want to bring in, maybe I have from Protiviti, one of the, like an audit program that I want to leverage. So I can actually query our knowledge room for any of that guidance. Again, whether it's PCAOB, SEC, FASB, I can bring in, that internal audit program or any of that guidance. And then this is what we see being really valuable to upskill some of those junior auditors that are, maybe looking at this area to be audited for the first time. We can actually have these prompt templates. So for this one, I'm going to run my policy and procedure review, but it's all templatized to meet, where you're looking and where you want to be within the platform. All those chats are historical, so I can actually, share that chat. I can share it with the team, whatever makes sense, for your team. But we're going to start to, build out some of that information there. We're going to be able to see, hey, our AI is going to go through what the user wants, what the user needs, review that documentation, map it against, that program or that guidance that you have, and that'll start to generate, the RCM for us. And, we're mapping through a lot of documentation here just to kind of show you what that looks like at an end state. Is something along these lines, right? We can see that RCM, where the policy, the source document, the section, risk category, description, and this is all something that can be configurable. We can really tweak what we want produced as a part of an RCM. We can even recommend test procedures based on that program. Make an initial assessment on design adequacy, whether or not it's partial, adequate, where the residual risk is. We can do some of those high-level calculations. But I think, as you saw earlier, as we were running that agent, we're actually going to be able to go back to, not only my test program, where does it say, I should be this is the test procedure that we should be performing. But I'm also going to be able to go back to any of that source documentation, right? Where's the control description? Pull up some of that information here within, that financial reporting, or even, any of that's level of detail. So we'll be able to really refer back to some of that information within the policies and procedures. So as that's created, I'll actually show you one that I also did as well. But yeah, really nice way to just kind of see, control metrics, right? What are those key controls? What are preventative? But again, always have that source documentation back to, the policy and procedure itself, just to kind of show you what that end result looks like here. Perfect. So of course, right, what do we do with this documentation? We're actually able to download this, clean it up into a nice Excel format, can then use it to start to execute, my control narratives, my walkthrough procedures, my test of effectiveness procedures. So again, a really nice way to leverage the AI to sift through a lot of that unstructured data that IA really needs. And I think we have a question in the chat. Let's see. Why is AI becoming relevant to internal audit right now versus a few years ago? Okay, great question. I think it really, to boil it down, is teams are just being asked to do more with less. I think, there's a lot of use cases out there for internal audit. Teams are, they're leveraging ChatGPT, they're leveraging Claude, Gemini, but there's risk associated with that, right? Plugging confidential data into these large language models. That's why teams come to us and say, hey, we want this vertical AI. It's purpose built. We don't learn on your information, but at its core, teams need to work through items faster, and they want, again, to become that trusted advisor within the organization, so that they can really be effective in their work. But great question there. Perfect. So let's shift into a little bit of what our automated testing can do. I think this is one of the most valuable aspects. Looking at remembering my time as an internal auditor, I think to myself, if I had Trullion, I may still be an internal auditor. But the way to start this off is we want to run our data match, and we are agnostic when it comes to what your work paper templates look like. So if they have procedures, if they have headers, we can ingest that and actually output that in the same exact format. So I'll walk through user access review test. We'll see our AI will start to analyze that. We'll actually determine what the test type is. We're looking at ITGC controls. We'll see that the procedures here are already picked up based on this cell where it's already been completed. So again, I'm walking through what it would look like for an initial test. So this is something that we can analyze those work papers, really dive in and understand what the audit team is trying to do here. From there, we can select our sample. We've analyzed that document. We say, hey, we see that sample. This is really those headers have been identified. The data has been identified. And then I'm going to go ahead and select that evidence. We'll see all the evidence that's been uploaded here. I'm going to select my user access testing. This is documentation I got from our source system. Most likely, the system owner, whoever really runs that, has that administrative access. I know when I was doing this, sometimes it comes in Excel, sometimes it comes in PDF. So we can really ingest any of that file type there. And then I'll go ahead and create my rule set. So here is where, we can use the AI to generate the rules and the logic behind what we're trying to do as a part of the test. Our system will go in, we'll read the Excel file, that work paper that we just uploaded, but it'll also read through all the source documentation and those procedures that we just pulled from the platform, or from this Excel sheet. What's nice about that is, that's really, you set this up once and then we can leverage it as a template. So I can see here, I already have my user access testing set up. All the logic is already built so that, I'm looking to match my employee ID, my employee name, job title, the status. I want to extract any termination dates, what department they work for, system role. So you can build out any of these templates as needed. I have a few user access roles, so if it's a different type of system that may have different types of values or data points we're looking to extract, pull, whatever it might be, we can always leverage that as needed. So let's say, and these are all built, I can even, extract data. So if I wanted to, hey, I don't want to extract the employee ID, I want to extract the employment status of each #employee name, employee ID. So a really nice way to even tweak some of these templates as you see additional attributes you want to test. These are your own. And what's nice is that they can be shared throughout teams. So if I wanted to make a change in this test for this particular control, I can have the flexibility to share that across. So what's really nice is we're actually looking at doing both a matching exercise here, but we're also looking at an extraction exercise as well. So I can go ahead and execute this test. Well, then, our AI will start to run that matching, run that vouching and tracing on our behalf. And we'll kind of see that system go to work for us. And this is where we see really all of the value when it comes to those high volume tests. I'll go through another example as well. It's more of a revenue leakage type test. So, if you have contracts, you want to make sure they're being invoiced appropriately. I think that's a really powerful opportunity for internal audit to, for lack of a better term, win favor when it comes to working with teams and visibility into the board of directors there. So we'll see here, right? We have our system generated. I got this right from my HRIS system. Didn't need to tweak it at all. But I can actually match these back to that employee name. We'll see that system, automatically flags and tags that full name, determines, if they're active, termination date, right? We're not expecting to see any term dates, for, those active employees, but we actually identified, those terminated employees, Patrick and Rita. So we can see all that detail and what type of access they're really looking at there. So this is definitely one of the simpler tests, and again, where we see teams leveraging us, to automate a lot of their procedures. But definitely a nice way to go across systems, really sift through a lot of that unstructured data that we typically get as auditors there. Perfect. Okay. So walking you through, another test that we see, and I won't walk you through the entire process, but I can show you a little bit of what this looks like from, the other side. And this is what I was talking about. We actually had an organization come to us and say, hey, I have a feeling that there's some sort of revenue leakage. I don't think I'm billing appropriately. I have, thousands of contracts here. I have all the invoices. I have all the information, but I can't sift through it. It's going to take me, weeks to get this done, and I'm closing my books. So what we saw this team do is they came to us and we loaded up all of their contracts. They just sent us a download of their GL. We were then able to identify that customer name, bring us right to that contract. We could see Ather Space Technologies. We could pull that total contract value. We can extract, the terms, how long the contract is, what the terms of those contracts are, how long it's for. But then what's really nice is I'm now doing a three-way match between my invoice, the contract itself, confirming that it's been billed appropriately, confirming that, it's actually accurately recorded in the organization's CRM. And then I'm actually going as far to say how much cash was received. So we're really tracing all of that all the way through. Now, what's nice is, again, in this scenario, we were able to identify about a 2% revenue leakage. But this is the exact scenario. Again, this is synthetic data. It's not, that client. But, in this instance, right, we couldn't identify an accurate match, right? Because we're expecting on the GL to record 49,833 on the revenue side, but it's being invoiced at 48,833. So really nice way to easily identify that. I know for some organizations, maybe this is an immaterial value, but we can always, paste that to the selected cell and create that linkage, as needed there. So just a really nice way to make sure that, hey, I'm testing an entire quarter's worth of transactions. I can do this through a template. I can just ask that team for the GL download, all the contracts, all the invoices, and really let the platform do all of that heavy lifting on my behalf. So, another area that we see teams really using the platform is, I have a question. Does the tool ingest contracts to pull the related? And maybe just a follow-up there to that question. Related how? Like related parties, related to the invoice itself?
I'm not sure. I'll give him a second, but we also have a question in the chat. Mike? He
sure.
just said, okay. Sorry, the question he just said, I just meant, do you need to clean the data or does the tool pull it?
Great question. So our stance and what we've seen is that if the human eye can read it, we can read it. So if contracts have coffee spills, if contracts have their terrible scans, we're able to actually read that data with our OCR that we've built on top of the artificial intelligence and the matching engine that we have. So it's actually very good. Again, I'm not going to say you'll have a push button control test, but you always have the ability to even search and query some of that information manually as well. And I see another question. Where do you see most audit teams still relying too heavily on manual processes? Yeah, it's a great question. So I think where we see this is exactly what I just showed. I think it's on the testing itself. They have all this unstructured data that they have to vouch and trace back to. When there are these purpose-built systems out there that can help with that process. I think even reading through policies and procedures like I just showed, being able to extract some of those controls, those risks, helping teams really get onboarded quickly and helping you really understand where the key risks are, where the controls are within an organization. I think another really great area is even, maybe taking a step back and maybe you're not doing effectiveness testing, but you're really just trying to clean data. I can actually leverage our data extraction, right? So being able to go in and take all of those contracts and just pull out those key relevant data points, what the contract terms are, what the ACV is, have that level of detail if I want to understand the termination, the renewal clauses, what the LOL is. Again, we're talking about contracts, in this exercise, but this can be done with any sort of unstructured data. So if I needed to just pull out every table that we see in a document, something really easily, that we can really easily do there. A great question. Perfect. Okay, great. So, thinking back on, hey, how does this help internal audit teams and where does it help? I think it's in the planning phase, right? Being able to ingest those policies and procedures, being able to really read through a lot of that unstructured data, But where, again, where we separate ourselves is that you have these platforms that are highly agentic, right? And even the LLMs, the Claudes, the ChatGPTs of the world, they're kind of this black box. Where we differentiate is that we want to make sure you're understanding and you can defend, hey, this is why this was a match. This is why this was an exception that I've noted in the audit report, because I clearly could not trace the evidence back, or, this is the rationale. This ties to the applicable standard, the applicable regulation or guidance that, the team or that department is supposed to be adhering to there. So again, we've coined the term, a glass box AI. So you have that visibility, you have that defensibility, and you're really not putting all your eggs into these what we call horizontal AIs, the general LLMs. We're more of that vertical AI that is purpose built and really gives you that level of trust and visibility there. Perfect. Okay. And I think just to kind of showcase a little bit more of the platform here, kind of some of the stuff under the hood, we have our knowledge room. This is where you can start to build out and really customize a lot of the platform. If I'm adhering to SEC guidance, right? What are the rules and regs, Title 17, if I have to apply FASB procedures, right? If I'm looking at other, internal audit programs, you can start to build this out. We can easily query, across these documents, but I can always leverage them, and codify, bring up that codification as needed. I think that there's a lot of different ways that teams have been leveraging us for, when it comes to internal audit testing, just general data cleansing. And then, another area, if you're a publicly traded company or you're pushing out financial statements, we can actually perform, quick validation of those financials, typically more, slated towards our external audits. But if you are, a non-public company and IA wants to take a pass, I can show you a little bit of what we do here. We can run our math accuracy checks, and this is really valuable even for internal reporting. You can actually do that quick check and identify any discrepancies that may be seen within tables, charts. I mean, I've run into tons of areas where I didn't. A cell was hidden on an Excel report, but then it was ultimately PDF'd there. So we're looking at a 10K here today, but the system will automatically perform all of that math accuracy checking. We can do any consistency checks, spell check, always, a fan favorite, I would say there. Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, I will say, team, I think in general, a really nice platform to become that system of action for a lot of teams, right? For those teams that are, leveraging some of the GRC platforms out there, this is a way for you to enhance a little bit of that system of record into something that can really push teams along and really make them invaluable to the organization there, and really reduce a lot of that risk when it comes to just doing sample testing. We give teams that opportunity to really do that full population test in a very efficient and streamlined format there. Okay, great. Well, I will say, thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate it. You can reach out to me. I think Olivia will send out some information as we wrap here, but always happy to chat about everything internal audit, risk, and compliance. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.